What's up, creators? In this episode, we interview Nick Audio from Ferrum Network, and we go into the very important topic of how to build resilient communities in Web3. We also give out some very unique alpha into how to get your first job in Web3 and how to actually build a business that not only survives but thrives during the bear market. And just as a spoiler, has to do with actually building a business and not just something out of hype. So this is a very exciting episode. I really enjoyed my conversation with Nick, and I hope you do too. We had some issues with the signal, and maybe it was my internet, maybe it's his, but so bear with us for those little snippets. But I think we had a great episode coming up. So stick around till the end and see you inside.
You're listening to the Web3 Creators Podcast, where we speak to the brightest minds and builders in crypto, DeFi, NFTs, and the metaverse. Our goal is to give you the absolute best tools for building a thriving business in the Web3 space. Now, here's your host, Hernan Arbor. Let's start creating.
Please keep in mind that none of what's said in this podcast should be considered financial advice. You are strongly recommended to do your own research and do not take anything we say in this podcast as a recommendation to buy or sell any assets whatsoever. All right, guys, welcome to the podcast. The Web3 Creators Podcast new episode is on, and I have with me, nonetheless, that Nick Audio from Ferrum Network. And this is, we're kind of, we've been chatting online a lot, but this is kind of our first live meeting. So I'm super excited. Ferrum is a project that I've grown to love and that I really respect what you guys are doing. So before we get into that, of course, for our listeners, you all know that none of this is financial advice and all the good old disclaimers. But before we get into Ferrum, let's get into you, Nick. How are you? What brings you?
I'm doing really good. Thanks so much for having me here, Hernan. This is a long time coming, so I'm really happy to be on your show. I'm good. Just market. You know how it is. We don't really stop regardless of market conditions. I think that's one of the things that really has set Ferrum apart, and really proud to be on a team of individuals who works just as hard, if not harder, through these kind of dark days in the market.
The builders and the bear will be the champions of the bull. That's for sure. But even before that, Nick, take me back to where you from? How did you get into crypto? How did you end up in Ferrum?
Yeah, for sure. So, man, I think as long as I can remember, I've kind of been a bit of a skeptic in regards to how our monetary policy is work relative to fiat currencies. And I think, I remember even in high school, like a long time ago, doing a lot of a deep dive into the Federal Reserve and how our money isn't backed by anything, really kind of going down the rabbit hole there. And I would say that I got into crypto because of idealism, right? The ideology behind what Bitcoin does for democratizing money. It took me longer than it should have to really
I think I lost you a bit there, Nick.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine now.
Okay. I was saying a friend of mine introduced me to Bitcoin in 2017, saying like, man, I can't believe, for all the disdain that you have for the Federal Reserve, I'm surprised you haven't heard of this sooner. And I was like, yeah, I've heard of it. I just didn't really know that was kind of the reason why it was created and whatnot. So I dove down the rabbit hole. And the rest was really history. So I started, trading Bitcoin and some other large cap alts in 2017. Started getting into the ICO craze pretty early on, and
Remember that one?
yeah, and then found Ferrum in 2019. I found Ferrum in 2020. Joined the team in 2021 after joining the governance committee first. So I became part of the GC. Just kind of started providing some insights, and eventually Ian approached me and was like, "Hey man, you want to come on the team full time?" And since then, I came on as the EVP of Partnerships and Growth, and have now kind of.
I have to make a parenthesis. Sorry, Nick, but
Yeah,
guys, creators, what you just listened is actually a strategy for getting a job in Web3 without having coding skills. So that's how it gets done, and that's how you do it, and that's how you should learn to get involved. This is that's the whole thing of the podcast, and you just gave us a great snippet there. So please continue.
yeah, no, I think that brings up a good point. It's like I there's no college degree for blockchain yet, right? It's like, and now you can have a degree in computers, right? Like in engineering, but like if you're not a coder,
One
like,
of those.
oh, cool, nice. So yeah, I mean, it's just about finding ways to add value to projects that you see fit. If you're looking to kind of work your way into a job in Web3, become part of these like private groups, governance committees, Discord channels, start providing feedback and insights, and eventually, like, there's a bottleneck for people who understand this space and who are kind of Web3 natives. And so I think a lot of times people feel like it's a little bit of a daunting task to get into to get a job in Web3. And I mean, for me, it happened very organically, right? I was just kind of an autodidact in a sense, like learning through reading and listening to podcasts, and taking a deep dive into the companies that I really appreciated, and
I think people underestimate how thirsty projects are for people to get involved into their governance, because every project has some kind of governance within the tokens. It's a way to decentralize the projects. But the main issue with this whole governance and governance utility about the token is that you need to get people not only involved and being a passive participant into what's going on, but actually being an active participant in the conversation. So if you find projects that you like and you're involved with the governance process, or even just being having a say within what's happening in the project, you'll eventually get picked up, and you'll be listened to with the project, which is something that most of us are not used to from outside forums or large platforms like Twitter, when you're a voice of the million, right?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to kind of think of yourself as kind of getting lost in the sea, but we're still a very, very immature space. And we're early. Anyone who's here now is early, so it's not as you stick out more than you think.
Right. What were you working on before joining Ferrum? Like,
Yeah.
what was
So actually.
you got cut off again? Is it my internet or yours?
I'm not sure. I feel like my internet's been pretty good. I haven't had any issues with Zoom or anything. So,
I
uh,
hope it's not mine, but let's continue.
okay. So Taha Abbasi, the chief strategy officer, and myself and Michelle Logue, the EVP of operations at Ferrum, were actually we've worked together in multiple capacities prior to Ferrum, and we were in the process of building a rideshare app in Utah when we started getting pretty deep into DeFi, and kind of found Ferrum together, and kind of came on as a team. So Yeah, prior to Ferrum, I was working in tech, but more Web2 related stuff.
Okay. So now let's dig into Ferrum and your role into it, because I also assume that this is kind of a new role you've just mold yourself into, right?
Yeah, in a way, that's true. Yes, actually, I mean that's entirely true. I came on to help in regards to partnerships, and that became kind of evolved more into a role that was designed to help with anything related to growth in general. So a lot of marketing, a lot of integrations and product related stuff. So kind of helping with the architecture of certain products, and which networks to integrate for maximum reach, and has kind of evolved into more responsibilities, including like tokenomics and monetary policy designs and things. So just kind of like Ferrum is still very much as we've scaled the company, we're also very much a startup, and still, just like many projects in Web3. So you have to really be able to wear a lot of different hats and contribute wherever you see space, and whenever you can create space, do it, because you'll just be increasing your your workload, which is and the value that you can add. So that's kind of how we all operate at Ferrum. We're a lot of type A personalities that see something that needs to get done and take the initiative and just do it. So that kind of mentality has allowed everybody on the team to grow into some pretty significant roles, and has been a catalyst for a lot of the progress that we've had over the last year.
And so let's get into a bit into the details of Ferrum, the Ferrum network, because I think we're going to give out some real alpha here into how to really build resilient projects that can withstand a bear market and are not depending completely on either external funding or the price of the token. So let's get a bit into it. What do you guys do at Ferrum Network?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think there's a plethora of things that we do. Our focus is narrowing as we kind of grow into our our niche, I would say, which is interoperability. However, we launched at the peak of a bull run. Well, we raised money at the peak of a bull run, launched the token into the depths of the crypto winter, and had to get very creative really quickly in determining how we were going to survive that impending bear market. And so, having raised a very humble amount of money through friends and family, mostly about $1.2 million, the money doesn't provide you a lot of runway through a bear market, especially. So, we, again, like I said, we kind of took the circuitous route to get to where we are now, where we started as a blockchain as a service company, providing.
I thought you were doing like staking as a service, right? That when projects wanted to provide staking for the users and provide like the reward pool for staking, and you were deploying that as a service. Am I right?
Yeah. So we deployed it originally for ourselves. This was like before DeFi was even a word. Smart contract based staking solution was pretty ahead of its time at the time. A lot of projects noticed that we were able to lock up a considerable amount of our own token, and allow our community to earn some APR as they kind of weathered the storm, reducing a lot of sell pressure that probably otherwise would have occurred had we not done this for ourselves. So other early stage projects facing similar issues, just based on market conditions, started coming to us saying, hey, can you deploy one of these staking contracts for us? And we're like, yeah, we'll white label it for you. So we started white labeling these staking products, which kind of evolved into a suite of staking solutions that we've deployed now for about 200 projects across a bunch of different ecosystems: Polygon, Avalanche, Ethereum, BSC, Moonbeam, even Algorand, our first non-EVM compatible network now. So That then led us to Ferrum Advisory Services, which is the incubator arm of the company, another B2B kind of vertical of the company. This one is less tech focused and more advisory services focused. So we had kind of like our B2B products and our B2B advisory services that were kind of like this V1.0 of Ferrum, right? That revenue, though, allowed us, not to ever have to sell any of our vesting as a team for the team tokens. Another 2 years. We've got a total of 8 years of vesting, which is unheard of in the space because most people kind of are relegated to having to sell their own tokens to pay for operational costs and whatnot, which is something that we've been fortunate not to have had to do.
Another snippet, guys. A good Web3 project does not dump on their community. It waits. Not. It's okay to sell the token, but if the idea behind the team tokens is if the project wins, the community wins. Like if the project that reaches adoption, that would mean that the selling pressure that some of the team tokens will have once vested will not affect the price. If the project wins, the team wins. That's the basis.
No, absolutely, and that's the mindset that we operate every day with. In fact, we're so bullish on what we're building that we consistently buy back Ferrum with revenue that we've generated from these services. But the next phase of Ferrum is something kind of even more exciting, which is kind of the phase that we're in right now, which is allowing us to not just generate revenue based on B2B products, but also transactional revenue. So multi-swap is this next product that we're coming out with that enables the swapping of any asset on any network for any asset on any network. So instead of having
is that like an actual bridge?
It's better than a bridge. We believe in a bridgeless future at Ferrum, and so multi-swap kind of eliminates the necessity for a bridge, because really, when you think about it, the only reason that people ever bridge assets to another network is so that they can participate in that ecosystem. Nobody ever says, like, I'm going to bridge my ETH to wrapped ETH on Polygon just to hold my ETH on Polygon. They're going with an intent to do something in that ecosystem. So the way that we move assets around different networks right now is pretty cumbersome because there's all of these different steps involved. Liquidating the asset on the origin DEX, on the origin chain, finding a bridge that bridges that asset, bridging it, going
a secure bridge.
Yeah, secure bridge, right? Hoping that your assets show up on the other end. Going to CoinMarketCap, figuring out where the liquidity lies. Oh, it's this place called PancakeSwap. Here's a DEX I've never used on a network I've never used. I got to go add the RPC. Oh, I need some BNB token. I got to have a friend send me some, or I need to find a faucet to get some. And then you go liquidate the asset. And it's this like multi-step process that really hinders a lot of users from participating in new networks or any network for that matter. So we wanted to kind of reduce those layers of friction and remove some barriers to entry for between, which is what we think that multi-swap does, because it's this very sleek user experience that on the front end the user is experiencing something like a Uniswap UX, whereas on the back end, all of those steps that I just described are happening. And so and we're using USDC as a routing token, which is a native asset on pretty much every major chain. So there's no need to implement any sort of wrapping or minting mechanism that's inherent in most interoperability protocols, which has also been the vector for most of the cross-chain exploits that have occurred in the last year and a half. About $2.5 billion worth of exploits have occurred because of this single mechanism that is deployed by pretty much every bridge in the space. You think bridge, you think wrapping, you think minting, right? And what
you think wrapping and you think minting, but the hackers hear bridge, they hear honeypot.
Yeah,
that's what they hear.
That's the word, honeypot, right? Because what happens when you wrap an asset on a destination chain? Well, you're basically minting excess supply of a token and creating a non-native asset. So in order to maintain equilibrium in the circulating supply, you have to lock the tokens, the native token on the origin chain in order to maintain the peg of the wrapped asset on the destination chain. So that's why you see millions of dollars of hundreds of different tokens sitting idle on these bridge pools, because they're literally locked there to maintain the peg of wrapped assets, which one creates a honeypot. Two, you're also giving the bridging protocol the operational control over the token contract to go ahead and give them the ability to mint tokens. So there's two different vectors for exploits, right? The most commonly exploited vector is the honeypot, but we just saw with the Binance bridge a bunch of BNB that was minted because they got a hold of the minting capabilities.
That was the Anchor, right? The Anchor protocol.
Yeah, that happened too. Exactly. Yeah.
They pinned like 10 trillion BNB or something like that.
Yes. I mean, like, we really wanted to like look at that and be like, all right, when are we going to reimagine the way that we move assets across networks? And the conclusion that we came to was that we need to maintain the native state of an asset across networks as we move it across networks. And that means that the token needs to exist natively on multiple networks. And so instead of bridging tokens, allow them to be composable on that origin network and be tradable for any asset on a destination chain, but not necessarily have to exist on that destination chain because of the point I made earlier. They move them to participate in that ecosystem. And
but
so
when you're trading from, even if you're swapping from one token to another, you have the liquidity pool for that pair resides in a specific chain. It's not like so how do you do that?
So that's where USDC comes in. USDC serves as the routing token, because since USDC exists on multiple networks, there's no need to wrap it, meaning there's no need to lock it. And if there's no need to lock it, then there's no honeypot. And if there's no honeypot, then there's no incentive. And if there's no wrapping, then there's no security risks with the bridging contract having operational control over the token contract, right? So you're reducing all those risks. So what happens on the back end is there's a token that is swapped in from, like, let's say Ethereum to BSC, right? Those two chains. Uniswap, it goes, where's the best liquidity? Like, where's the most liquidity lie? Where's the best place, the best price I'm going to get for this token? So it aggregates the liquidity same way that like 1inch would, right? Yeah. And it says, okay, the best LP for this token is Uniswap. Swaps the asset into USDC. USDC then exists as two different bridge pools on the origin chain and the destination chain. USDC pegged to $1 is swapped into the token, the desired token on the destination chain. But what's different about using USDC as the asset that's being bridged is it's not being bridged in the same way that assets are typically bridged, because it exists natively. Meaning you don't need to lock any amount of USDC. Like you could bridge $30,000 worth of USDC to the next chain and withdraw the USDC that was deposited into the origin chain without depegging the USDC, because it's not wrapped, right? It exists natively. So there's no need to lock up all of these tokens on either the origin and destination chains. Those bridge pools can operate independently of each other, if that makes sense.
No, that's a really good workaround. Then not with bridges. But Nick, so we jump from the initial beginnings of Ferrum, and we jump all the way to the new thing that you guys are doing, which is the multi-swap. And we skipped a big part, which is what brought you to Ferrum Network, which is the IDOs or project launches, right? And I still remember doing the whole thing through emails and getting the form and filling it out and participating in that way into the IDOs. So can we get a bit into how that started? And because I created my own launchpad on EOS called EOS Starter, and I can tell you it's like, oh, okay, we'll launch it. And then once you do launches, you understand that if you're committed to the projects that you're launching, and then that means that you're not selling the amount of tokens that you would get from the launch, then how does the launchpad work?
Well, the launch pad is still fully, and it's hard to call it a launch pad just because we usually do private sale rounds for projects, because we kind of take them on from an earlier stage, and do a lot more advisory work than your standard launch pad would do. So we offer earlier stage opportunities for FRM holders, and the launchpad is still operational, and we're still advising a lot of projects, and we'll continue to provide those opportunities. But it's really, not our main focus right now.
It's like I'm still working on turning that into kind of a business model, and I have to be honest, is it something that you're offering as an added value to the community? Because I don't know if you guys have been able to turn that into kind of one revenue stream.
Yeah, absolutely. We have. That's been probably the thing that's helped us scale the team from about
How does it go? Is it with the fees of the sale?
Well, that's one way that we're able to generate some revenue, but we also get a pretty substantial amount of tokens from projects that we incubate, right? We usually come on as the lead advisor, and typically projects have about 4 to 6% reserved for advisors, and we usually take about a third of the advisory token. So sometimes we get about 2% of the total supply of tokens, which when projects
You get it vested, or
yeah, of course, yeah, it's pretty aggressive vesting terms. So yeah, I mean, that's been a real blessing in terms of a revenue stream, but also there is the fee that which basically every launchpad kind of charges for like the opportunity, and kind of like custodying the money as serving as like a sort of escrow between the projects and the investors. So yeah, that have allowed us to treat that as a revenue stream.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and it got me really involved and hooked into the whole IDO phase and the whole launches. And I think it's a really cool new trend, right? Like replace the whole ICO wave with new projects kind of launching on a decentralized manner, because what we kind of evolved into is not being so reliant of the actual gatekeepers. Because before, on the last cycle, if you were not if you were not going to be listed on Binance or what, that was like a major, um, you had nowhere else to go, right?
Yeah. That's a good point.
So let's talk about now the bear market. Let's first get the ugly stuff out. Were you guys affected by FTX? Did you have any of your treasury in there? Or?
No, I mean, I think there's a couple points to make here. One, like, we're obviously savvy enough to never want to hold any assets on a centralized exchange, except for the assets of our own FRM token that we need for market making purposes and things like that. But yeah, no, we weren't affected at all by the FTX debacle. I think it brings up a very crucial point, as remember in the beginning of the episode here, I talked about how Ferrum raised a very humble amount of money, about 1.2 million, that was mostly through friends and family. So while other projects were out raising tens of millions, we just decided to create a business that generated tens of millions and haven't needed to concentrate the token distribution amongst a bunch of whale VCs, right? So we have zero exposure to VCs, whereas as FTX and BlockFi and the whole kind of unraveling of 3AC and Alameda started happening, and VCs imploding, and trying to balance their books. They were dumping tokens from projects that they invested in, and people are going, okay, which projects are these VCs invested in? How much exposure do they have? All of a sudden, what was once a really good thing turned quickly into a major red flag, and people are opting more for grassroots, community-led, evenly token distributions that are a lot more even and less concentrated in the hands of whales. And Ferrum fits that mold tremendously, right?
In hindsight, it was a great strategy.
Total blessing. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's still, are you guys still like kind of shifting somewhat of the focus, or what are you guys doing differently now that the bear market's here? Because the bull market had to be ton of updates, and I was involved in the community, so I was learning from what you guys are constantly posting, and it's how it's how you play the game. You have to get the bull run is kind of more struggle for the eyeballs, as I see it, the attention, whereas the bear market's more of a chance to go back to the basics, building and focusing on the core products, right? Or how are you guys approaching it?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's I would say 50% of that is accurate, right? Like the bear market is definitely the time for building, but so is the bull market. I'm a pretty strong believer in build it and they will come. Like perfect example of this was like, look at what happened with Binance compared to FTX. While FTX and all these other companies were spending millions of dollars on Super Bowl ads and flexing really their dollars, Binance was out hiring more folks to continue to build. And who's left standing, right? So I'm a firm believer
that was also a very clear red line when it comes to user funds, right? If you're not, if you're actually respecting the deposits that user makes, then you should be good. I'm assuming that that's how Binance works. Like, I want to assume that even if Binance tomorrow, we hope it doesn't, but if BNB goes to zero, they'll still be able to, allow all the users to withdraw their funds, whether it's on any coin or on any spot holding that they have.
Yeah. I think your point of FTX misappropriated funds is very valid, but on the other side of the coin, Binance, while they're not misappropriating funds, they're also just not spending money trying to get all the eyeballs, right?
They're not raising 420 million based on the market cap of BNB.
Right. Yeah. There's such a thing as a runaway valuation, right? And also their token operates a lot less like a Ponzi token than FTT did. So there's kind of a lot of things to unpack there. But I guess my main point was it's always more beneficial, in my opinion, to spend the money on good engineers, a solid team, and regardless of market conditions, keep your head down, continue building, continue to add value, and try not to hype your token up or your project up for the sake of, win moon, right? Like that's not solve the problems that Web3 faces, and we're helping to contribute to the problem of interoperability, which is why we're going for a more network-oriented approach now with launching our mainnet, as opposed to there's a limit to blockchain as a service products, right? There's only, so much revenue you can generate in B2B products, whereas like with a network, you can really add a lot more value, giving an environment in which applications can be built and in our case, connecting these different applications from various ecosystems and whatnot. So, when the bull market,
so you guys are launching your own chain on Ferrum, like your own mainnet. And is that what is that network going to be based on?
Yeah, so we'll this will operate as a parachain in the .sama ecosystem. So first, it'll launch on Kusama, and then we'll launch on Polkadot.
Do you guys need to still run an auction, or is that ship sailed?
No, so because of the revenue that we've been able to generate through our legacy products, we've been able to buy a ton of DOT off the market. And we'll probably be able to fund our own parachain slot ourselves without having to, distribute
crowdfund.
People aren't buying tokens, right? They're loaning DOT in exchange for tokens. And so really there's no investment that they need to make back. And so it's almost like free money in a sense, right? Obviously it's a great way to grow the community and grow your token holders, but Ferrum's in a different boat. Since we've been a project already for a while now, we have a community. A lot of that community will be coming over to .sama, but we're fortunate to not be in the same position as a lot of newly launched projects that need to build a community, whereas the crowd loan in that case is a great way to build your community and get some token holders. But it's also a really good way to inflate your token supply. And the more tokens that you allocate to the crowd loan, the more tokens that enter circulation, and the more diluted your holders get. And so we may do a small crowd loan, depending. I don't think we'll really need to, but if we did, we wouldn't be allocating 15-20% of our tokens, which is what a lot of parachains do. I would say the most we would allocate would be 5%, and I think even that saying is a lot. But again, I don't think we'll need to conduct a crowd loan.
So before we get into the tips for builders, why did you guys pick the DOT ecosystem to launch your mainnet?
Yeah, so a couple reasons. Gavin Wood always had this kind of mentality or bet against blockchain maximalism, right? Which is why he started Polkadot. It's very much emphasizing interoperability. Their whole layer 0 approach, this internet of blockchains. So XCM is their kind of format for their cross-chain messaging, and really the underlying tech behind their interoperability features, which is going to be crucial for us to leverage in order to connect a lot of these .sama based layer 1s to external layer 1s that exist outside of the .sama ecosystem, like EVM compatible chains, other Rust based chains, Algorand, Pyteal, right? There's these Move languages now coming out with Aptos and Sui and all sorts of stuff that needs to.
There's still EOS, then. I can get you guys some grants if you want to integrate there as well. They're the EVM's launched, so we're probably going to
some contacts over there if you got them for sure. That's definitely one we've got.
I do.
Yeah, that's great. Good deal. Let's connect on that for sure. So yeah, I mean, all those networks still operate in silos, and there needs to be an environment that connects them all, and that's what we're building with the mainnet. But back to your question about why we chose Polkadot, there's the interoperability components are key. Also, the ability to kind of launch your own layer one out of the box and focus less of your time on consensus, because you're actually leveraging the consensus of the layer zero, which is Polkadot or the relay chain. So being able to focus more of your resources on customizing the chain rather than devising your own consensus mechanisms was crucial. And then also the built-in governance that exists as these along with the ability to kind of deploy these out of the box layer one solutions. Polkadot has a very, very sophisticated governance mechanism that can be leveraged and also customized. And so you see varying degrees of how networks leverage Polkadot's governance, but they all have pretty sophisticated governance mechanisms, which was another enticing decision.
No, that's awesome. So, Nick, let's get now into a bit of the alpha tips and tricks. You guys are still holding a strong community during a bear market, but we know that bear markets can last for longer than we all want to, right? So, something that I've noticed from the previous bear markets is that it's not really the price drop that sometimes kills the project, but it's that boring period of consolidation where the community is kind of dwindling out and people and the opportunities are not there that much. So how do you build a resilient community during those that will overcome those crypto winter times?
Yeah, so earlier kind of we were talking about how the most important thing is to keep your head down and continue building. That's not to negate the importance of engaging your community, right? And, there's a difference between hyping up your project and trying to get, influencers to shill you and, flexing your marketing dollars. There's a difference between that and engaging your community in an organic way. And that's what active and engaged. We have an ambassador program, right, where we really want people who believe in the project fundamentally to be out there sharing the fundamentals of what we're building, rather than Ferrum's gonna moon, that kind of stuff, like spammy type stuff. Like we're trying to build a community of people who understand what we're doing. So there's a lot of education through our YouTube channel. Stuff like this, is really important to educate folks on what it is we're building, why we're building it. So Tom, our head of marketing, is just brilliant with coming up with ideas to continue to keep the community engaged. And his YouTube show that he started, we've put out over 100 episodes now that have all been turned into podcasts. And we bring on different partners, we bring on different team members to talk about what they're building. There's just a constant flow of information between that, our Medium, always coming up with different initiatives, different features within our product suites, and just continuing to not only build, but to showcase what it is we're building, and to continue to find ways to engage the community and keep them active. So to our success through multiple bear markets now is our ability to maintain the attention of our community.
And so what would you suggest, let's say, Web3 builders in the space and Web3 creators, to how do they, besides all the things that you mentioned that you guys are doing, so how would a builder go towards creating or building a new community during these times where maybe attention is drawn, maybe where people are even leaving the space? So how would you go about that?
I think the biggest thing is build something that people need, right? Like it's not so much about, mm, you know, like yeah. I think one of the things that's really helped Ferrum is that when things have become stagnant, we've pivoted and we've found products, services, features to implement and create and develop that were needed by whether it was projects, users, developers, whatever. We've done a really good job at remaining relevant by continuing to innovate and remain important quality to have as a builder or a collective of builders is kind of this ability to defy the sunk cost fallacy, right? When something's not working, don't continue to just go down a dead end for the sake of your pride or the fact that you've got so much time invested into something. Be able to pivot, be able to take feedback, be able to incorporate feedback and continue to build iteratively until you come across a product or a feature that people want. And if people don't want it, scrap it. I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, and be nimble about your assumptions. So we can summarize it as build something that people actually need, right? Keep your community engaged,
Yeah.
no matter what. Keep them involved in what you're building. So a good stream of communication, and also not be afraid to take risks into shipping new stuff and trying different things, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Break things, as they say, or,
Move
chaos.
fast, break stuff, or try not to break this. Since the blockchain stays broken forever. But
Right.
Nick, listen, this has been awesome, man. I want to thank you so much for taking your time and coming onto the podcast. I think there's been an immensely informative and really a golden episode in terms of what we can give to the community. And where can our listeners go check you guys out on the Ferrum Network? To tell us also, I don't know if the Crucible thing is a different website, but where can people
Yeah,
go?
I'm glad you brought up Crucible. Crucible is, well, first of all, thank you so much, Hernan, for having me on. This has been a really fun conversation. I really like the flow of your show and the conversational nature. Everything felt really natural and unscripted, which is always way more fun for me when things are like this. So I appreciate your approach and for you even considering us to come on your show. So thanks a bunch for that. As far as where they can find Ferrum, definitely follow us on Twitter. Join our Telegram group. Our Telegram group is awesome. We've got a lot of very dedicated community members. We really have the best community, and there's always fun conversations happening in our Telegram. And Discord is starting to ramp up a little bit more. We're trying to generate some more traction over there. But Discord, Telegram, Twitter. Subscribe to our email. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like I mentioned, we've got a constant stream of content coming out over there. And then, if you want to participate in pre-sales and you want to earn some APR in a sustainable way that's generated through transaction fees that come from the pre-existing circulating supply rather than the emissions of newly circulated tokens, which is how a lot of DeFi protocols work, then stake some CFRM. CFRM is the reflection token. It's a wrapped version of Ferrum that has transaction fees associated to it. So if you stake that token, the transaction fees that accrue from people transacting the token, playing arbitrage, unwrapping, staking, unstaking, buying, selling, transferring, all of those transaction fees minus a small percent that it's burned, they all go back to the folks staking. So all those rewards are coming from the pre-existing circulating supply. There's no like inflationary, DeFi model. So we call it a DeFi 2.0 product because, it's really the way that I think DeFi was intended to operate. So so Crucible is another product that we failed to talk about. I always forget one product because there's so many things that cover everything. I got the Crucible plug in there now. So.
Well, yeah. Thankfully, I brought up. So you also know that I've been. I'm in the deeps. I'm not just a spectator on the project.
Yeah. You're a Ferrum diehard, and we appreciate folks like you, man.
Yes, Nick, thanks so much again. Please send my regards to all the team, to Ian, and to the whole core team. I'd love to have you back. So let's
anytime.
And anytime you guys have something big, drop me a comment. We'll get you guys back. And guys, go check the Ferrum Network guys out. And this has been awesome. And glad to have you, Nick. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, man. This was fun. Really appreciate it.
All right, dude. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Web3 Creators Podcast. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and all of your favorite platforms. And if you're serious about building your own Web3 business, head over to web3creatordojo.com and check out our courses. That's web3creatordojo.com. See you soon, creators.